Good evening. Muy buenas tardes. My name is Kimberly Black-Rincan. I'm the director of the Ignite Hub. Welcome to all our guests that we have in person here at the Hub and our guests that are online. This is our final Fireside Chat career series for the season, for the spring. We'll be back in the fall with a whole new lineup, but this is our last one. So we're winding down. It's commencement time, celebrations. It's also an important month that we're celebrating here and that we have this amazing panel for our event. So today's event is celebrating Asian American and Native American Pacific Islander achievements in STEM, excuse me. So this is an exciting panel. We have amazing guests. We have first time ever a guest moderator. So Dr. Hernandez is here. Yes, you know, we like to keep things innovative at the Hub and share the limelight. So we're hoping that this will continue to be a model that we can have some guest moderators come in as well and moderate for us. So actually, I'm just going to introduce our guest moderator, and then our panel has an amazing way that they will talk about their journey and their experiences in STEM. So with that, let me pull up my notes. Okay. All right. Shinta Hernandez, PhD, is the founding dean of the virtual campus at Montgomery College, providing leadership in online education, open education, and the Digital Learning Center. From the time she started at Montgomery College in January 2007, she has helped to advance work in open education and open pedagogy, social justice and equity, inclusive curriculum, faculty professional development, international collaborations, online education, and the social sciences disciplines. She also serves in external leadership roles. She is the director of the Maryland Online Leadership Institute, president of the Community College Consortium for Open Educational Resources Executive Council, member of the Chief Officers of Online Learning, and board member of Wonders Learning. Dr. Hernandez was recently awarded with the Diversity Business Award by the Washington Business Journal and will be recognized by the Montgomery County Council next week for her statewide accomplishments in celebration of Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Dr. Hernandez received her BA in psychology from Brandeis University, MPP in social policy from Georgetown University, and a PhD in sociology from the University of Maryland, College Park. Dr. Hernandez, welcome. It's such an honor. So I'm going to pass the mic over to you so that we can get started. So thank you for being our first guest moderator, and I'm excited about this evening.
Thank you so much, Kimberly. What a warm welcome. And thank you so much to all of you who are here, as well as those of you who are here virtually. It is an honor to have been asked to moderate this for the first time ever, but also to moderate during a month that obviously has a lot of meaning to so many of us here at the college, in this room, in the community, and certainly worldwide. As you know, it is Asian American, Native American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. The naming or the nomenclature got longer as the years went on, so it is we have to keep up with it. But it is a pleasure to be here, and thank you again for that warm welcome, Kimberly, and for Eduardo and everybody in the Ignite Hub for the invitation. So before I turn this over to the panelists, I just wanted to share that Montgomery College, and for those of you who may not know this, has a federal designation that is called AANAPI. And so what that stands for is Asian American, Native American, Pacific Islander Serving Institution. And so, yeah, exactly, thank you, yes. And what that means is that, number one, from a quantitative perspective, we have an X percentage of students who belong to that student demographic. And so for that, we receive the federal designation. But on top of that, that also means that we are eligible for a lot of benefits, both in the community as well as around the country with the federal government and so on and so forth. So we're really excited about being able to continue the work and celebrate the achievements of those who belong in this demographic populations. So with that, I have the pleasure of introducing, or rather, having them introduce to you who they are. And I've had the opportunity to meet with them a couple of times and talk with them already a couple of times. And they have such fascinating stories. I think you will all be wowed by their personal stories and lived experiences and how that intersect with their professional trajectories. So on that note, and without further ado, let me hand this over to our first panelist, Alavi.
Hi, everyone. Everyone online, everyone in person, thank you for having me. I'm humbled. Kim and the team invited me to participate. As an Asian American, I'm really happy to participate in these types of events. It really helps to not only bridge a lot of the I call it sort of gaps with a lot of folks in different various professions to connect with other people in their respective communities, but also just to provide a perspective to, in this case, aspiring STEM professionals. I won't go into too much detail, but I'm currently the executive director of regulatory affairs, functioning as the chief research compliance officer for Children's National, where I always make sure I get this right for my public relations team or media team. We are ranked number 5 as a children's hospital in the nation, ranked number 11 worldwide by Newsweek. And that was as of last year. And I'm hoping we're going to be ranked again this year. I'm pretty confident. So Children's National conducts a lot of research as part of our innovation arm or mission, as part of our role in supporting the community. So in that role, I ensure that a lot of our researchers and staff and individuals who are participating in any type of the innovation activities are doing so in the regulatory manner that is prescribed by the federal regulations, state and local laws, but also by Children's National standards, because Children's National as a very strong part of the community and serving the pediatric community, we want to make sure that we hold ourselves to the highest level possible in terms of patient care and the support we provide. So we have a set of standards that are definitely above and beyond what the laws and regulations require. I've been in this field for a little over 20 years. Previously, I was in New York City at Weill Cornell Medical College of Cornell University. I was the director of research compliance for the institution. And prior to that, I've worked in the government sector, private nonprofits, pretty much doing the same thing. I always say when I present what I do, I always find it funny that now 20 years into it, my parents still don't understand exactly what I do. But COVID has allowed me to make that example a little bit better with helping them understand that, there were vaccines and stuff that were coming out during COVID. We were making sure that those were coming out in the proper way. Let's just put it that way. So, but I'm humbled to be here by my esteemed co-panelists, and thank you.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. My name is Sue Kim. I'm a program director here at Montgomery College for Information Technology Institute. What we do here at ITI is to make sure that we have courses for those individuals who wants to get into IT or those who want to advance their career in IT. And as many of you know, the IT changes so quickly. There are new technology, new skill sets to learn almost every month, if not every week. And we are ensuring that we have the knowledge and the skill set that we can give back to the society, to individual who wants the new technology. Talking about the little background, I have a bachelor's in computer science, and I recently got master's in data analytics. I am what you call a little bragging. You are never too old to get new education. Thanks for coming today.
I love that note on never being too old to get educated, because that's sort of where we are right now with the AI revolution and whatnot. Hello, everyone. I'm Steve Chen. I am the executive director and founder of the Coding Coffee Collective. We're a group of 33 meetups across North America that hosts events on a bi-weekly or monthly basis for developers of all skill levels, brand new to 20, 40 year plus of experience to very much get together, meet new developers, make friends, and grow. We've recently been awarded $25,000 in grant funding for our New York chapter by the Hinge dating app to very much help end the Gen Z loneliness crisis or epidemic announced by the Surgeon General of last year. And on top of that, I'm also the head of community and developer relations at a AI startup called Sift AI, where we're building community analytics tools for tech companies, only 11 months old. In a past life, for basically the 10 years I've been in tech, I essentially got started after dropping out of my senior year of university. I actually came to Montgomery College before then, former alumni. But yeah, going through college as a 1.5 generation immigrant and having to pay for it, very not reasonable from my end. So after doing that, I got into software development from a non-traditional path, self-taught, and then very much got involved with community. And that's basically my 8 years leading till this. Worked at a bunch of startups, from unicorns to failed very early stage startups to even, a couple other companies, mainly around software engineering for the past 10 years.
Thank you so much to all three of you for sharing your biography with us. And again, no matter how many times I've talked with them to get us to today, I'm still learning new things from them. It's amazing, very impressive stuff that you all are doing and have been doing. So each of you have touched on your brief biography. You touched on a little bit about where you grew up and that sort of thing. But I want to take some time now for each of you to actually delve into it a little bit more, because we're interested in learning more about your upbringing. So if you can share a little bit more about who you are, where you grew up, your childhood, your neighborhood, your family life, all of that make up who you are today. And then later on in the panel discussion, we'll talk about how that influenced you to go and pursue the different things that you've pursued in your lifetime. So how about we start with you, AANAPI?
Well, for all you out there, but my ethnic background is I'm Cambodian, and I have a fellow Cambodian friend of mine here. And I actually arrived in this country as a refugee with my parents when I was actually only a month old. So I always say my ethnic background is Cambodian, but I feel like I'm American. But I balance both, and that's just sort of the upbringing I had. And growing up, I feel like the values that I was brought up with are very common values that many families are growing up with, especially minority families. It's the strong family relationship. It's the focus on education. It's the focus on supporting the family, focus on a family name. And in my family specifically, our family, specifically my grandmother, who recently passed away, she was a very big part of the community. A lot of individuals sought advice from her. So a big part of that is like, Alavi, you got to study. You got to become a doctor. You got to become, okay, not a doctor, get a PhD in something. If you don't get that, maybe become a lawyer, but that's about it. Oh, maybe pharmacist or dentist is okay too, but not a businessman, not anything else. And it's kind of this, I call it the immigrant or refugee perspective, where success is only defined as your next generations, your children, your offspring that reach certain levels of what they think are professional. And growing up in my family, again, very traditional, interweaved with very much more modernized assimilation of the American culture, American background here. It was always such a, I would say pressure, but also like a strong support system, right? And it wasn't so much that if you don't achieve certain things, you're a failure. It just was more so of you want to take advantage of these opportunities. We came to this country to escape, which a lot of my family friends and my colleagues and stuff have gone through. It was a genocide in Cambodia in the 70s. So my family came to this country knowing that this is an opportunity for them to give their children and their offspring a better chance. And therefore, you have to take advantage. There's absolutely no compromise. There's no taking a break. You have to push for it. So growing up, again, as I was mentioning earlier, I was always given this predefined plan of becoming a doctor or something in medicine. And, I got to a point where after college, did a little bit soul searching and then got into a random job, which is in this field, about a year and a half after I graduated from my undergrad and realized that there's something here. It's actually a job that I could like. It's a job that I feel could have some value to my day to day. And again, like I mentioned earlier, my parents still don't understand what I do, but they know that I'm successful enough to support myself in Montgomery County. So that's success for them. And and talking about how do we get here? How did I deal with that? Again, I don't think I'm saying anything that most of us are not familiar with in some form or fashion. It was an ongoing conversation with my parents. Obviously, a big part of that was getting allies, my aunts, who understood a little bit more. They were a little bit more educated here and understood a little bit more of the way of life. But ironically enough, it was my grandmother who kind of told them to let him kind of figure it out. You guys have instilled some level of common sense in him and some logic. So I think he's probably doing the right thing as long as he's really having a focus and having to push himself towards some sort of success in the field. So and again, I always tell colleagues and I tell people that I've career mentored over the years, I say, there's always a path. You always try to plan a path for yourself, but don't be reluctant or be a little bit more open to just explore other opportunities that come your way, because you'll never know if that is actually your true calling. So a little bit of how I got to where I am today. Oh, pass it on. Yeah.
My turn. Well, I came to United States when I was 11. My family immigrated from Korea when I was 11. And when I arrived, I did not know any English, including alphabet. So it was quite a interesting adventure, learning English, learning the new system, learning to learn. So when I was in high school, I was in all the AP courses, but I loved art. And I wanted to major in art. Me thinking I'm American, I could do whatever I want when I'm 18, right? So I start applying in art schools, and then my mother came over one day, caught me, sit me down, and said, you are good at art, but you're not genius. Let's learn something that could earn your living. And she said it in such a calm voice. And this is the woman who say, if you want to do anything, long as it's not stealing, go for it. And when she said that, I'm like, okay, what could I do? So I have two older sisters. One majored in computer science, the other majored in electric engineering. I went to my high school counselor, asked him, what's the difference? Because I cannot tell the difference. They seem to do the same thing. And he looked at me and said, I don't know. It's not like I'll come back to you, but it's like, I don't know. So what do? I applied. I got into college as an electric engineering major because it was a little bit tougher than computer science. And in my first year, I took all the computer courses and I loved it. I was like, I don't care what electric engineering does. I don't know, but I don't care. I love what I do. So I start taking in that route. I somehow, my sister keep on telling me, you need to get some experience. What can you get experience when you're a junior? So I got into internship, and I got lucky because I was Asian, I was female, and I had a US citizenship. So applying for government-related company, that's what they're looking for. They could check off Asian, they could check off female, diversity, right? So I started working for government-related company for 7 years, and then relocated to New York and started working for security. And at the time, security to me was government security, right? But this is New York, so it was stocks and bonds. So I have to relearn the terminology, security. And we got involved with, believe it or not, at that time, the very first paperless trading. So everything was a touch screen, and we have to worry about what happened if the the person who's pressing it, finger is not thick enough because it wasn't that detailed. We don't have to worry about it now, but this is back when I'm aging myself here. I know. But so I got into that, and then that company sent me to Korea as an expat. So I went through all different stages, career-wise, and then decided, you know what, I'm going to retire and raise my family. So I did that and start teaching English because I got so bored staying home being a housewife. It wasn't just in my blood. So I got into teaching, and I said, well, I'm enjoying this, so let me get certificate for teaching. So I got TESOL certification and start teaching for the school system and start teaching adults. And then life happened. So I moved back to United States, start looking for a job, and everybody said, you are in IT, you are great. Why don't you apply? And I put my IT manager's hat and say, no way I'm hiring her. I just knew because IT is so fast, and they would have to spend some time retraining me, right? So are you going to retrain somebody who's in 50s, or are you going to train somebody who is in 20s? I would choose 20. I'm not allowed to say that, but I would, right? Realistic. So I got a job in a doctor's office who's needed dual language, right? And I got bored and said, I need to go back to school. So what do? Come back to MC, start learning the new technology. And it has been the greatest adventure since then. And that led me to, I got back into IT as a consultant. I didn't really enjoy it. And once I heard that there was an opening in MC, I said, me. Right. So that's how I got into MC, and I taught classes for ITI. And then when management role came about, I again shift. But so IT, I mean, I guess I've been very blessed that whatever the first step that I got into, I enjoyed immensely, right? I mean, if I had to do something else, I don't think I would have enjoyed this much. So whatever your heart is, I hope you find it soon and go with it. Because bottom of the line, it's not the paycheck that wake you up in the morning. It's just the joy of doing the work that you really enjoy. And paycheck helps.
Wow, I love that. Very much. Definitely the paycheck helps. Hello everyone. Again, I'm Steve. I come from a slightly different background from my fellow two panelists, where I was actually born in the US at Children's National. I was born in DC, grew up in PG County for half my life up until middle school. So I was basically probably the only Asian kid in my class most of the times, especially in middle school. And then moved over to Montgomery County middle school. And then I am possibly a black sheep out of, I think, most Asian American stereotypes where I had below a 2.0 GPA in high school and definitely below a 3.0 in college. So I was like majoring in business and all that stuff, and having immigrant parents who also are very hardworking, but they also never attended high school in general. My dad, he runs a Chinese carryout in Hyattsville, and possibly a very lower income area where, yeah, he works there still even to this night, 6 out of 7 days of the week, and then is very much always sort of in that mindset. And through multiple experiences growing up in that restaurant culture, I personally am a Fujonese American, which is Chinese American, but specific to the Fuzhou province of China. It's very rural, it's very poor. Famine was very common across all my family members. My grandma doesn't get why I sometimes just don't want to eat my full bowl of rice. But yeah, it's like growing up in the restaurant culture, I was always like encouraged not to do what my dad did because it is just very hard, grueling work, especially in the summer when they don't want to turn on the AC. And one of the things I learned while growing up was like how successful you can be in business if you really, or as an individual, if you can really just stick to things over a long period of time. Of course, I didn't do that in college. So in college, I went to Montgomery College, amazing time, went through that, went to university, didn't realize what internships were until my senior year. I was like, ooh, I forgot to do one of those. So with a sort of business analyst degree or information systems, I was like, all right, let me try to figure myself out. I, yeah, self-taught how to code mainly for the paycheck, not necessarily for just interest in technology. I've always been interested in technology, but over the course of learning how to get into that, I started to pick up that community aspect, the importance of being involved in your community, giving back to the community, meeting others, and sort of creating bonds across all different ages, diversities, racial, gender, abilities. And that's what really brought me to the place I am today, where I very much, yeah, do something similar that my dad does, but possibly less intensive. But at the same time, it's something that's really meaningful to myself and really is reflected from my entire upbringing as sort of a black sheep that never really fit in. So decided to create my own community.
Thank you, all of you. So I know this discussion is about the panelists, but I want to share one or two things. So Steve and I have some things in common. Not this part. So I was born in Indonesia, so we're not from that same country. But I came here when I was a year old, and I grew up in Langley Park. So that's a community in Prince George's County in Hyattsville, Maryland. Beautiful, culturally rich, amazing town, but also plagued with a lot of negative situations and circumstances. It has a high degree of poverty, drugs, crime, you name it. It's unfortunately what Langley Park was and continues to be, but still rich and beautiful in so many different ways. So I was there up until about 8th grade, 9th grade. I probably shouldn't say this, but I got into a little bit of trouble, as did so many of us in the neighborhoods. Unfortunately, it was just that peer pressure that kind of drew us in those directions. And then I got put into an all-girls Catholic private high school in Montgomery County. Hated it in the beginning, but ended up loving it and realized, you know, with that maturity, then you realize, okay, my parents made the right decision by looking after me and making sure that I was taken away from some of those issues that I was in the middle of. But fast forward, what I wanted to also say was recognizing that this panel discussion is about achievements in STEM. Mm-hmm. I also was told to go into STEM, and this leads me into my next question for the three of you. I was told to go into STEM. I was told to be a doctor because everybody in my family is a doctor. Mm-hmm. Or if I didn't want to go be a doctor, then it was to be a politician, right? It was only those two avenues. So I remember freshman year in college, making that phone call, dreading to make that phone call because I was in Massachusetts, my parents were here. And I remember telling my dad on the phone, I don't want to major in pre-med anymore. The silence that was on the other side, only probably 5 seconds, but felt like 50 minutes, was really tough for a freshman in college to grasp around, especially when your parents supported you along the way and they've been nothing but loving, et cetera, right? Now, fast forward, as many of you know, I did not go into STEM. So I stuck to my grounds and I said to mom and dad, I love what I do, which is not the science field, kind of going back to what Sue was saying. Whatever is in your heart, your passion, follow it. Money may or may not be there, but money can come, right? If you're really good at what you do because you love it, that part may eventually come. But that's what wakes all of us up every day, right? Is going and doing the job that we love. So this leads me to my question for the three of you about family. And each of you touched on this a little bit already, but what kind of cultural or family conflicts would you mind sharing with us when you eventually found your passion that may not have been aligned with the interests of your family? Alavi, why don't you share with us first?
Oh, I kind of wish my mom was here so we can have a nice conversation. But, you know, I think it wasn't so much okay, we can call it a conflict, but it was more so of from their perspective is why. You know, you have an opportunity because I actually went the route of applying to medical school and getting in and everything else. And it's just like, why? Why not? And I said, you know, so I always looked at things from the financial perspective, just because, again, growing up in the refugee immigrant background, having lived in Langley Park actually for about, I think, 5-6 years of my life, I looked at it as also having a father who worked 2-3 jobs for many years. And I said, yes, money is important, but it's also important such that I don't want to spend it too if I don't need to. And I looked at the medical field again, an amazing field. I actually encourage a lot of people to go into it. Where so actually, a fact, we're low on pediatric physicians. People are not going to pediatrics. It's another side note, but I looked at it as I did not want to invest the time and the money into it. And because a big part of that is because it just wasn't my interest. So I felt, why am I going to invest so much resources into something that wasn't interesting to me? So what I did was I didn't exactly say I wasn't going to do it. I just kind of went along in this specific field until I got to a position, my first management role, which was with Columbia University in New York. And I showed my mom, said, hey, I'm moving into New York and I have this position, I have this opportunity. I'm going to take it. And again, looked at me like, why would you leave? You're working at a government job, you know, government contracting seems very stable. You know, it seems prestigious. It seems like you're exposed to the right people. Like, nah, I want to do this. This is what I really want to do as part of my career trajectory. And the discussion was, okay, that's where you're going. And it's not until really, I'd say about 7 years or so later, did they really get that what I did was important and really understood that I'm really following a path that I sort of designed for myself or paved myself. And that the predisposed or pre-designed, pre-architecture path that they had was actually not the only path. And later on, they realized that, you know, raising a child in America is also means raising a child exposed to other things than what you're exposed to. So they were really supportive. They're very happy. And the most recent, really, because I have a 2-year-old son, that's the light of their life, is their grandson. So of course they don't care about me anymore. It's focused on them. So the easy to say the conflict was gone by then, anyways. But no, I'm kidding. Yeah. So how we dealt with it was just really like a very short conversation. It wasn't much to talk about, but it was more like, just trust me and I know what I'm doing. And then they saw it later.
Well, I'm the youngest, and I was a very good Catholic girl. So I say that because, as I mentioned, when my mom set me down, and, changed my career, changed the path. So I said, okay, engineering, let's go. So I started applying everywhere except Maryland, thinking I'm American again. I'm gonna be with my friends, go out of state, So I applied and I got accepted. My sisters were over the moon. They were so happy for me. You got in where? It's like, you should have tried the other Ivy League. And I'm like, I was so excited, right? Here comes my father. He's like, you're going where? No way, right? Being an Asian woman, going out of their house before getting married was not in the dictionary at all. So not only I got in trouble, my 2 sisters got in trouble because not guiding me correctly, right? And here I am crying my eyes out saying, I have no place to go. I'm a failure. Where can I go? So the first place came to my mind was Montgomery College. So I applied to Montgomery College and I said, well, I know I'm late, but let me try Maryland. And I got accepted. So I was happy with that. So that was my, conflict. What conflict? You do whatever your parents tell you, right? But I think the latest one is when I came back to America. Nobody, I mean, they were all supportive of me, but nobody understood why I wouldn't go in or even try submitting my resume. And my mother, bless her heart, this time she didn't say anything. She just let me be. do it. And she just gave me space for me to reground myself, relearn the language, relearn the society, and relearn what is it that I want to do. And I think because of that, I was able to make a decision and say, okay, I'm ready to go out of the world now. Where's my door, right? And once again, it was a Montgomery College who, I'm not trying to sell Montgomery College, but truly, it was Montgomery College that opened the door for me.
So the question was like, how have I dealt with conflict with family? Yeah, so I'm actually the oldest out of 5 siblings. So there's 5 in my family. My parents are divorced. I have a 27-year-old sister, like related, and 3 half siblings, 20, 20, and 19. So growing up, I've always sort of been essentially the leader by birth in a way where my family, they never went to high school. They're basically saying, hey, Steve, you got to teach your sister and your siblings how to progress in this American society, because following my parents' advice, just go to college, you'll be fine. That, as many of you know, these days just isn't the truth at all. So sort of even to this day, I have conflicts with my parents, and that's very natural as humans, right? Like you're never gonna really fully agree and align on everything, but that's sort of something I've been able to very much take pride in, is the ability to not have to fully align with people I just don't agree with. So when I dropped out of college, my parents were like, "What are you doing, Steve? Like, we don't believe in you." I was like a delivery driver at that time for like 3 to 6 months, and they're like, "Steve, you gotta get more money. You gotta do something else." And when I told them I'm moving to Fort Lauderdale, Miami, to very much sort of attend this coding boot camp that was like $10,000, and it was like something that I wasn't even able to translate to them. They're like, "Oh gosh, I can't believe you're doing this to you." But after a while, and after coming back, doing this unpaid internship where they were still like very much doubting me, um, I came to realize at a certain point they started to actually respect who I was as an individual, my ability to very much take risks and go against everyone that's like, don't do this. And that's what I very much prescribe to all my 4 younger siblings to this day, is like, the path that your parents set up or whoever's authoritative in your life has set up isn't always going to be the right path. You have that. And I think this is a wonderful part about being American, is the individualism, the ability to very much select your path in life and literally pivot in whatever direction. Like in tech, I think I've worked in roughly 5 different technical roles as an individual contributor, and now I'm like in this like crazy management role, which I never thought I'd be doing. It's bonkers, but at the same time, it's like I would literally want to do nothing more else besides make more money. But that's we'll hold off on that.
Well, let me share that each and every one of us in this room, physically as well as virtually, we possess demographic markers that influence who we are, what we say, how we say it, what we think, how people perceive us, how people treat us, right? So these demographic markers include things like your race, your ethnicity, gender, religion, socioeconomic status, nationality, the common American identity that so many of us in this room share. So these are demographic markers, like I said, that influence how we're treated, how we're perceived, but also how we go about and live our lives in our societies, our communities, in our professions, and in so many of the spaces that we occupy, right? So the question that I'd like to ask our panelists here is this: in your profession now, along with roles that you may have held in previous institutions or companies or organizations, can you share with us how your individual demographic markers may have influenced how people treated you, how you treated others? Give us a sense of what that professional environment was like for each of you from the time that you started work until now? Olabi, I'll start.
You know, I'll start by saying I think I've been very fortunate to to have different roles in environments where there were a lot of people that were actually very supportive. I'd say for about the first 10 to 12 years of my life, the majority of the roles I went into, I was by far the youngest person by about at least 10 to 15 years. And what I found, which was initially what I thought was going to be discriminated against, not of my ethnicity or how I look, it was just my age. Thinking like, and when I was working with the, with the military for some time, there's a lot of hierarchy, rank that's involved in there. So they also look at, what's your background experience wise, what's your background education wise, or if you're active duty, how many stripes you have on your shoulders, those types of things. So I actually never I was always like I said, was always very fortunate to receive a lot of support from the people around me. But some of the things that I experienced that are, like you mentioned, the identity markers. I won't say specifically, but I have been in various more senior level types of meetings with people that serve in the various roles as chairs of departments or executives in various administrative roles. There were many meetings I was in where I was only one of 2 or 3 out of about 30 or 35 people, the only minority in there. The majority of the people were Caucasian male and mostly older. And I never actually felt that I was discriminated against or there were any type of oppressive approaches to the way they spoke to me or anything else. But I knew that there was this sense that they felt I should feel like I'm fortunate to be here because I was given a seat at the table and because of my specific role. And I could have gone to. I look at that when I experienced it at that point. And this was, I think, at this point probably almost 10 years ago, and then I subsequently experienced it in other roles as well. I looked at it as I could go 2 paths. I could be more aggressive or more more responsive in a way that won't be professional, but I decided to take it as they're not familiar with my background. They're not familiar with what I can do. They're not familiar with who I am and what I could bring to the table. So I took it as I'll show you what I can do when we have these conversations and we start to discuss these various policies and issues. And, in a way, I was able to earn their respect. And I know, and I don't mean to go off on too much of a tangent, but I know there are a lot of younger professionals up and coming in various fields that have this sense of like, I should be this way. I should be treated this way. Everyone should be treated with respect. It doesn't matter who you are, ethnic background, or what age, right? Or varying level of your job. But understand that sometimes you have to understand people are not familiar with the experience you have. They're not familiar with your skill set. So you have to show them what you're able to bring to the table. And once you show them, you will earn that respect. And of course, the few minorities may still not respect you, and that's a very different set of people. I look at those individuals as those who are not confident of their own skill sets and are just worried about someone quote unquote taking their job. Okay, but we'll go into the mentorship part later. But that's just my perspective and what I've experienced.
Too early. Let's see, where do I start? As I was working for government contractor, I got the quite high top secret level clearance. And I was escorted into Pentagon and what's called vault. So what it is if you could imagine submarine with the door, you would have to open the door with the key, and then you will literally walk over the door frame, and inside there's few computers and so on. As soon as I walked in, there were 2 Caucasian guys, male. They turned around and looked at me and said, "Can you be here?" I'm like, I don't know, I was just escorted in, right? And the guy who escorted me in was their supervisor. And he said, "Shut up. She has a higher clearance than you do." And they just turn around and start focusing as nothing happened. So in their view, Asian female coming into that secured area was unthinkable. but here I am, right? Another event happened when I was working for a security firm, New York Stock Exchange firm. There was definitely a boys club in management. Absolutely. Everybody knew it. But they don't talk about it. Of course, on the side we would. But when an opportunity came, when they were trying to open up a branch in Korea, and they need to send somebody as their IT manager. Not because I was female or anything, but because I would like to think that I knew the stuff and I knew the language and I knew the culture. So they thought. Because once again, I came here when I was 11. Your language, Korean language, stopped at 11. You have a different vocabulary, and you never experienced the business world, right? So as soon as I got into Korea, they treat me like foreigner. You're American, not Korean. So they will call me by American name, Soo Kim, instead of calling me by Korean name, Kim Soo Young, right? Same name, just a different order, but they will still call me by American name. So yes, and of course in 90s, Asian society, IT manager, female IT manager, guess who got to be on TV? Because they were focusing on female managers and so on, so on. But embrace what you have. I didn't choose to be Asian. I didn't choose to be a female, right? But that's okay. Just do whatever that you really like. And whether you're Asian or whether you're Caucasian, whatever the nationality is, doesn't matter. Whether you're female, male, or any other, I have to be politically correct, right? Other groups, it does not matter. It is you, and do what you really enjoy. And I think it's the key for me. Find your passion and go with it.
Awesome. So for me, as someone that's worked predominantly in seed to maybe Series B, at best, early stage startups based in DC, I've always been sort of the token Asian American at a lot of these startups I worked at. And I don't think I've ever worked at a place where I haven't felt any like non-microaggressions in a way, where there's always like this weird feeling in the back of your brain as essentially the only Asian American in, I guess, like a startup of like 30 to 100 people. There's always that inkling where you feel like something might not be sort of up to par of if I were a Caucasian, or if I were someone that was a part of sort of the cultural hegemony of the workplace I was in. It's always sort of been like that, but at the same time, I always like to think of it as like we're all human, and sort of essentially biases, discrimination, stereotypes are essentially built into, especially in American culture, it's very built into sort of the way a lot of our organizations top down operate. And yeah, it's one of those things where like the only thing I can prescribe is basically just take the lead and create the world you want to see, because like with Code and Coffee, it's possibly the most diverse group I've ever worked with of people, and even then, I'm not paying any of them. So it's one of those things where, like, yeah, you really do need to consider, especially those people online, which I assume are roughly the demographic we're targeting. Yeah, just take a look at the LinkedIn page of the jobs you're applying for. Do you want to work for an organization that isn't racially representative of the environment you want to work in? And if that's not even a factor, that's okay too. Because like in reality, we're only at jobs for the money. Like it's not like I've been very money focused as a Chinese person, of course, but at the same time, it's also like we're there for the money. We're not really there to make friends, essentially. Like you can literally, yeah, just eventually become an entrepreneur and like do whatever you want to do in life. But at the same time, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, there's always going to be something that's going to be like a chip on your shoulder on a Monday, whereas you're, trying to leave the office by Friday or something like that. It's a given. And yeah, it's just part of the game.
Can I add? Like what you said about chip on your shoulder, I think that's a good way to kind of put it, because I have come across people of varying age groups that seems like they do have a chip on the shoulder for whatever reason. So again, like I mentioned earlier, when you encounter, whether it's at a meeting or an event, when you encounter these types of scenarios where you feel like you're either targeted or you feel like there are these maybe subconscious microaggressions towards you, I always like to say, you know what? You don't know the person, you don't know the group. Let's take it as they're probably not familiar with who you are and your skill set. And you should take that as pride, because they're probably threatened by the fact that you have a very specific set of skills and level of experience that they're not familiar with. But it's all how you approach it, and approaching it in the more aggressive manner. I always feel like it's never beneficial.
Absolutely, and we appreciate the suggestions, advice that you're giving us here. I would imagine that many, if not all of you in this room and in virtual, at one point in your lives experienced something that just stung, right? Because it attacked you, or it felt like it was an attack over something that we just don't have control over. And we always wish for greater humanity and just better outcomes. And so having discussions like this and having heritage months like what we have throughout the year, certainly not just this month, really allows us to step back and reflect and truly increase awareness and have a better understanding of the diversity that make up this country, this community, this college, that our society is made up of. And so kind of tagging on to some of our panelists, what they've said, I too was fortunate enough to always be in a room where diversity existed. In fact, actually so diverse that I was almost always the only Asian in the room. So yes, and starting with my years in Langley Park, to my years in the Catholic high school I mentioned, to college, graduate school, my first couple of jobs after graduate school. It wasn't honestly until I stepped my foot into Montgomery College that I began to see all forms of diversity, including Asians. So all those decades of living, never seeing anybody look like me. So not knowing what that even feels like, right? So I always found myself to be like somebody else. Maybe I'm like that person because I don't see me on TV. I don't see them. I don't see them in the neighborhoods. I didn't see them in my schools, in my jobs or office space. So I always felt like I was somebody else. So I was living the identity of another person. And it goes back to what Sue, you were saying. In sociology, we have a term for that, and it's called the outsider within. So you're on the inside because you belong on the inside. You're a part of that group because either you go to that school, or you are in that place of employment, or you live in that neighborhood, but you will always be that outsider because you don't look like everybody else. So that growing up was confusing. And then looking back, that must have stung as a kid, never knowing what it could be to be me, right? Always living in the eyes of somebody else, or feeling like I'm living in the eyes of somebody else. So kind of going back to the panel here, and this is, we talked about this in our preparation meeting, so this is not necessarily on the list here, but explaining to us all that you all went through, from family life to the cultural expectations to school to neighborhood to your place of employment. Is there anything that you would do differently, or is there anything that you would say differently with the things that have happened throughout your lifetime as it relates to who you are? Alavi, I know that's a curveball question. We didn't necessarily prepare for this, but I felt like we were going along those lines. And so I'm interested to hear, what would you do differently? Steve, do you want to start us off?
Yeah.
I'll start off since I keep forgetting the question. Yeah, so I don't know. I feel like I would not have done anything differently because the way I see it at the moment is like the organization I created is only like maybe 2.5 years old, and we're in 33 cities across 40 local leaders, 100 plus volunteers across the spectrum. And if I didn't really have, especially those um, sort of life experiences as a non-traditional person transitioning into tech, I don't think the organization I've created that is making this much impact would have existed. Like we've literally hold 360 events per year, and these are like connecting over 40,000 something developers across very, very beginner level sides of the spectrum, where it's like very much people that never went to college, people that don't have CS degrees, basically leading technologists that have 10-year plus of experience. And like if I never really had honestly the awful experience I had sort of trying to break into tech, trying to find my footing in America, I don't think I would be the person I am today. And that very much helps, yeah, me empathize with those folks that are very much, and it is even more and more as time goes on, and what becoming more of a majority of folks that are very much doing the exact same thing. So
I have to echo that. Whatever the choice I have made on purpose or not, the result is who I am now. If I were to change anything, and it's funny that you actually mentioned it because I did have the reflection on this not too long ago. If I were to change anything, making different choices, what would that be? Was actually thought, and my conclusion was nothing. All the bad mistakes that I know I have made, I will still make it because from it, I grew. And today I am who I am because of those mistakes, which means I'm quite content. Right? I mean, if I didn't like myself, if I didn't like who I am now, I would probably say, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I will change that so that my life will be different. I am not who I am now. I could be a millionaire. Oh my gosh, I could. As an example, I'm not sure whether I'm allowed to say this, but I am earning less than what I earned before I took my first retirement. Do I regret it? Do I regret it? No. Am I happier? I'm not really sure because I was quite happy then as well, but I am happy now as well. Therefore, do I miss it, the money? Yes. Do I regret it? No, I don't.
I think the only thing I would change is having not made. So I would still have majored in STEM in undergraduate and grad school, but I probably would have majored in engineering just because something I'm more interested in. But I was still in STEM because I excuse me, I majored in bio and psychology, and I majored in biotechnology. So still in STEM, still the sciences, still thinking about that, but I would have majored in engineering. But would I've changed anything else? And similar to what my co-panelists has mentioned, no, because it's kind of helped me strengthen and mold to who I am today. And sort of like that old adage, you learn from your mistakes, get up, pick up yourself up and do it again. I feel like you can only build character and build your strength and build who you are by falling down, by learning the mistakes, by getting exposed to people that want to bring you down. It helps to really build and strengthen who you are and in your character.
That's such wonderful, profound messages for all of us, right? So many lessons learned that each of you shared with us. And I know as you're all probably reflecting on your own lives and your own lived experiences and thinking about some of the things that helped you or hurt you, all of that collectively just made you stronger, more resilient, and more empowered to make differences in our world and in our society, right? So before I get to the last question, and after the last question for the panelists, I also want to open it up for questions from the audience, virtually as well as in person. But I wanted to do this a little bit, and this is something different. I want to engage with the audience a bit And see, this is what happens, Kimberly, when you've got you're piloting a guest moderator. Let's see. But is there anybody in the audience, both here in person as well as virtually, who is comfortable sharing with some of their lived experiences and their cultural conflicts? Because we're talking so much about it and there's so much sensitivity to it. But here's an opportunity for us to safely talk about it and share. If there's anybody who wishes to do that, please, I'm happy to send this over to you, the microphone.
I know Steve. But I guess, is this okay?
Yeah.
So my experience, I think one thing that I've heard, and maybe 2 years is a little different, but I come from the background where my dad has a PhD, and it's like the kind of the opposite thing where like your parents are very educated and want you to follow this. It's still the same, right? They want you to follow this path where they know they come, they came from very turbulent times. They grew up during the Cultural Revolution. They were like close to starvation at times. They're just very concerned about you being able to support yourself and be able to like take any kind of unexpected chaos that they had to live through. And I think like as a child, I never quite understood why they wanted that badly, but as you get older, you kind of start to be able to empathize with your own parents and kind of understand like why, like what is their motivation for doing some of those things.
Yeah, so it's interesting. Very similar experiences. My parents were doctors or engineer. Those are only two choices. It wasn't a choice elsewhere. So I follow engineer all the way through. I went through, and then of course, private versus public sector. So I was a federal employee my life career. Safe, nice and sound. My parents loved it. Them nice and sound career. And similar experiences too, right? Walking into a room, people looking at you, and then realizing I'm the supervisor, and they actually work for me. So, so those are things. But I think glass ceiling exists. Whether they say it or not, right? Again, I was one of the few Asians in a predominantly white Caucasian, male Caucasian leadership pool. So I will walk in and I will be the only different face in the room. Right? No, not even females. This is a whole male society, boys club. Right? But yeah, working through it, and I like your advices about how you should just be who you are. Let your achievements go forward and be your banner. I think that's great. The one thing I do notice is that sometimes the ones who want to tear you down the most are actually people who look like you. All right. When you're the only one in that club, the people who look like you are the ones who want to tear you down because they want to replace you in that position. They're actually the ones who actually go after you the hardest, not the other people in the room. So that's the only thing I've noticed. And they sort of, I don't know, other people sort of sit back and watch that going on. Because in my career, the ones I have to watch out the most are the ones who look like me.
Just to repeat, most likely that occurs because there's only one seat available for you. Okay. Many times when you look at company profile, well, not nowadays, but back when you look at company profile, you will see all male, Caucasian, and possibly one female. again, Caucasian. And to me, when I looked at it, I'm going, is she there because her capability, or is she there because she's a female? And that's the exact question. That's the one of the reply I said to one of the interviews that I did. The question was, how do you see yourself? What do you foresee in 5 years? And in my mind, I was thinking not to have an interview like this. Being a female manager should not be a news. Being an Asian manager should not be a news. It should be your capability that bring you to that table, not your ethnicity, not your race, not your gender. I thought.
I actually wanted to ask, so to your comment, gentleman in the back, I definitely say I've seen that as well, that, you know, your own folks who look like you try to bring you down, but I feel like also it depends on maybe the sector environment that you're in as well. Which is the reason why it's so important with events like this. I'm going to do that. Is that we have to expose and really support each other in the STEM field. So this way, understand that there's a network of people who look like you, understand what you're going through, and can help you along the way. But I want to ask again, gentlemen in the back and you, Sue, because you mentioned about going into the room, only person of a certain gender or certain race. So let me ask: have you guys at any point in your respective careers and positions going to a meeting felt like you had the what they call the imposter syndrome? Oh, yeah. Meaning feeling like, do I really belong here? Am I really qualified to be here? Mm-hmm. Should I be here? You know,
it was more like I need to prove to all of them that I belong here. It wasn't a question of do I belong here, but the questions exist or existed, and hopefully it doesn't exist, but most likely it is. Mm-hmm. I mean, the world is made of diversity, right? And that's a part of fun or excitement about the world, because not everybody's same. You know? One of back when one of my advisors said, if when you eat salad, you said, "Oh, I don't want broccoli because I don't like broccoli. Oh, I don't like onions. Take that away. Oh, I don't like this. I don't like that." What are you left with? Just lettuce, and it's a blend, right? So we need all different kinds of ingredients to make a very good salad, and I think world is like that too.
Did you want to add?
Yeah. So I love that question about imposter syndrome, because like I feel as someone that's like pretty new to tech and possibly the least experienced out of this entire panel is like I always feel like an imposter almost everywhere I go. And at a certain point, I had to sort of very much just embrace it and try to very much just come off as confident as the most standard American. Like it's sort of one of those things where like in tech, since things just go just generally pretty fast, especially with AI, new technologies coming out left and right, you're never going to really feel like you belong or like are assertive enough in a specific technology unless you're like just pouring thousands of hours into it. And like with community, it's one of those things where you sort of have to be honest and be very straightforward with yourself. But at the same time, there's sort of always that aspect of like speaking, right? Like you got to choose your words very carefully to at least come off as confident, at least come off as assertive in being a decent leader at what you do. But at the same time, you could also know nothing at all. And that's okay. It's like imposter syndrome is a very, I think, natural thing a lot of people feel, especially in America, where it's just very much a very diverse salad bowl of people. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So as we, I'm looking at time, and as we wrap up, I'm going to get to my last question, and then we'll get to the Q&A piece. But I wanted to ask Eduardo, was there anybody in the virtual space who had anything that they wanted to share with respect to the last comment? Okay, thank you. So the final question for each of you is this: what advice would you give to members of the audience here in person as well as virtually, those who wish to pursue a career in the STEM fields, and particularly those who may be struggling with family or cultural, I'll say conflicts, but maybe not necessarily conflicts, but discussions, hard discussions that they have to have. So what piece of advice would you give us?
So, great question. I think what I'm about to say is applicable to not just STEM, as any field or profession. I think first off is to find a mentor in what you're doing. And so that mentor is also could be could be a friend, could be a coworker, could be a boss, whatever, college professor. But a mentor is also your cheerleader, is the person who's going to help maybe be a soundboard, help guide you through the path, maybe help discuss some possible STEM focused career paths. A mentor is very important. It's throughout your whole career. I was fortunate enough, as I mentioned in previous scenarios, that a lot of people were always willing to help me out. And I found a mentor who I'm still friends with it to this day, 19 years later. So she's a retired executive and she helps to guide me through. And now I'm guiding her through this level of her life when she's more entrepreneurial because she's starting her own consulting company. So I say that's one. And I'm going to take the mic again so one more thing. I think this is the greatest advice I've ever heard, and I'm stealing it from a person you guys all know, former President Barack Obama. He said in an interview last year with LinkedIn, I think I maybe stating it, but it's just learn to get it done. Okay, and he mentioned it in the context of, you may not know what it is that you need to get done. You may not know who to talk to, but just figure out a way. And everybody around you will always like you for figuring out a way to just learn how to get it done.
To add to that, try it. Just try it. As my mom said, long as you're not stealing, try it. And yeah, yeah. The WDCE is a non-credit courses. So it's a great opportunity to learn the new technology. If you want to give it a try, whether IT is for you, you may hear that IT has a great prospect, and it does. But IT is not for everybody. STEM is not for everybody. Whether you know that it's for you or not is only way for you to experience it. Give it a try. If you enjoy it, take the next step. If you enjoy that, take the next step. But if you said, oh my God, I thought it was great, but I don't understand a thing, it's not for you. Find different passion.
I love that advice because I realized IT was definitely not for me. But at the same time, from that entire experience of self-discovery, I realized what I am actually built for. And following up on Alvi's initial sort of tip on finding a mentor, to find that mentor, you sort of need that network or access to networks of people that know what they're doing. I personally didn't have anyone in my entire family that was in STEM, weirdly enough, as an Asian. And yeah, my tip would be definitely just get involved in the local community. If there is no local community that's active enough or meets your own individual needs, I personally, many of you know, I'm a night owl, so I don't wake up before in the AM hours. So one of the things that even my organization does, we host events at 9 a.m. in the morning on Saturdays. And I can't even attend those because I'm just not live. So definitely, yeah, get involved with your community, start forming networks. That's possibly the most easiest or most accessible things a lot of people can do. I personally suffer from pretty intense social anxiety, especially in my early 20s. It wasn't until I took a speech class at Montgomery College that I actually really got out of my social anxiety funk and became a lot more, I guess, community orientated, networking. And that's how I've been able to just build up a network of people that I'm able to authentically relate to, but also very much, yeah, just find mentors, coaches, X, Y, and Z. It's very, very critical just to network itself. But if that sounds boring, just make it your own community and just do what you want to do. And tie in your personal pursuits or professional pursuits.
I'll also add, because we have here advice about finding a mentor or mentors, plural, building a network that's people that you can rely on. So I will also include that your network can be social media as well. If you're following people who have similar interests as yourself, those are the people you want to connect with. And who knows, down the road, those virtual connections can actually be something else. It evolves over time, but it can evolve with if you want it to evolve. So you also have to be intentional in following these individuals and having them follow you, sharing things that are productive and resharing things that are informative and that really help with your personal and professional growth. So I'll add that social media can serve as maybe a mentor may not be it, but the network piece for sure can definitely be from social media. And I'll also add this on social media, a former Montgomery College employee put this on as a post. Who is on your personal board of directors? When you think of board of directors, you're thinking, a top level of an organization or a company, an institution. But what she meant was your personal networks, people who can help you. And this is the group of mentors that a person usually needs to help them grow. So that just, it was a way of thinking about this that I had never thought of before. So I wanted to share that with all of you as we all continue our lives and keep growing and learning throughout our lifetime. So now I want to open this up to the audience, both in person as well as virtually, for any questions you might have for our esteemed panelists. But how about we give them a round of applause, by the way? So any questions? I'll hand over the mic, or Kimberly can help me hand over the mic.
So one thing I've observed is I'm part of 2 alumni associations, and there's the, I guess, Black chapter, of alumni, and they're huge. And, there's all these other minority alumni, and they're regularly attending. There's just always this outreach to them. And then the Asian ones are always like, they're much harder for people to actually it's much harder to find volunteers for, and B, I think it's harder to get people interested. I think there's this idea, maybe it's cultural or something else, that I see less participation. And is there anything you would say to try to broaden or expand that kind of participation? That's not just alumni.
Yeah. Yeah. Like Asian extracurricular meetup groups. I actually tried starting one. It's very hard. But at the same time, I like to think about it as like, how do you start community, right? Like, what is needed for those building blocks of communities? First, you need definitely sort of a community ritual, something to very much, or actually a community topic. Like, what are you guys trying to accomplish? But then thinking about it from, I guess, a ecosystem standpoint of like, what are the community rituals? And like, as a, I guess, Asian American North Native AANAPI leader, what does that person sort of look like, and what mannerisms do you think they should have to very much lead a group like that? Because I think one of the main things I think Black persons of color in today's society is like, it's a very, very I guess, popular topic. Like, it's very much covered by the media, it's covered by the news, but especially with things like Asian hate that we've experienced from 2020 through 2020, even now, it's sort of a lot less it's a lot underreported, and there's just frankly a lot less Asians as well. So one of the things I suggest is definitely sort of figuring out what are the critical building blocks of building an initial community. It is very much likely looping in your personal networks, getting those people involved, setting up community rituals, and very much ensuring there's a consistency to that. Because even my brother, he's not Taiwanese, but he's the head committee of a Taiwanese American Student Association at University of Maryland. And I'm like, why do you do that? And he's like, it's fun. And I'm like, all right, well, it is very much, yeah, back to the basic building blocks of building a group of people up and very much figuring out like what commonalities are fun, I guess, if that makes sense, is very much how do you keep folks entertained and how do you also very much keep them driving toward a mission that you guys generally want to accomplish. And it is very like deep and nuanced a lot of the times. And yeah, it is, yeah, it's very much hard mode in building community, especially an Asian American one.
Actually, I think you make a good observation because I I had that observation in some young professional groups when I was trying to connect with other people, and then trying to connect with other Asians in STEM. Probably the first 5 years out of college, and I don't know the answer, but I really, in general, in the past about 20 years of being in a professional field, I feel it's shifting. I think it's maybe some generational thing as well. Obviously, if you're first generation, you're not going to be focusing on networking. You're going to focus on education, find a job, make the money so you can provide for whoever, right? Yourself or whoever. So I feel like it is evolving. I actually don't know, and I do agree. The Black African American community have a very strong network, and I'm very impressed. So what I've done in the past in my specific area, I would ask them because I connect with folks at my previous institution who are focused on Black men in medicine. How do you guys like just reach people? And they tell me it's almost like cold calling. They just throw out emails, and people just gravitate towards it. So I don't know if that strategy will work with the Asian Pacific Islander community, but I really feel like it is evolving. I think a lot of us who are grown up here or born here, as we evolve, we find the importance of having a network and supporting the network and having the network grow even further.
And I'm just going to add one thing, and this is not necessarily for the Asian American population per se, but just as a documented, well-known research tactic or marketing tactic, articulating that organization will help them. Finding a way to let them see how they can play a role in advancing. Sometimes that helps because a lot of times, we're also busy with so many things in our lives, but if we can hear or see how we can play a role in whatever this is that you're looking at, maybe we might be more inclined to invest our time into that energy or effort. Again, this is not necessarily specific to the Asian American Alumni Association or any demographic, but that could be, if you aren't already doing that, these targeted, like articulating to these individuals how this can benefit them may be effective. But let me see if there's anyone else in the audience, virtually or in person, who has another question for the panelists.
I do have a comment though.
Yes,
so first of all, thank you so much to all the panelists and Dr. Hernandez for, driving us through this great experience. I would like to thank you all for your sincerity, for your honesty, and for your candid responses. As I was listening to everything that you have said, so I realized that really you speak of your experience as like Asian Americans, and but you really are speaking about the experience of any immigrant, and that's the commonality that I see. I mean, everything that you have said, from like that family and cultural expectations to, not being American enough here in America and not being Korean enough in Korea. I've experienced that too. So thank you so much. It's been really, really enlightening. I think that we have benefited greatly from your advice and your experience. So thank you so much. This has been a great, great experience. Thank you.
and thank you to the Ignite Hub for the invitation.
Absolutely. Of course.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Hi, guys. I am Maria. Nice meeting you. I am actually volunteering, and you were talking about the volunteering part with Kimberly and Eduardo, and I am, my background is in human resources, graduated from University of Maryland, and I have a master's. And I love my major, of course. I decided to go for it because it's my passion, as you were saying earlier. One day I heard that one of my friends got hired by a tech company, and she said, "Oh, you know what? I went to this boot camp and I got into the tech." I was like, "Wow, how?" I need to know this. So, she got my interest. So I signed up for a boot camp and I ended up going. Of course, I like it so much when I was a little. I was an immigrant, as you guys. My first language is Spanish. And of course, I struggle because you have to go to school, you got to learn. And of course, going to classes, you meet different people. Um, it is a challenge, as you mentioned. Of course, during my bootcamp, it is another challenge because it's new terminology, new things that I never knew existed. Of course, it was amazing because I learned, programming languages, testing tools, and all that. So every time I go somewhere, I'm a very outgoing person. I love to get involved into the technology world nowadays. I went to many seminars and meetings. No Latino girls,
Yeah.
no Latino guys. And if there is, just one, not even. So I'm like, okay, why is this happening? What is going on? I live in the Montgomery County area, and you just mentioned that, your part, you lived before in Langley Park and all that. So I pretty much related to that. So I'm like, if there is something I can do to involve my Latino community into tech, it will be amazing. So I want to see what can I do in the future. But for me, it's like, I really would like to see a different community, my community to get involved as your community is. Because everywhere I go, there is always an Asian, there is always an Indian, there is a Caucasian, there is somebody else, but no Latinos, which is pretty sad, because there is a huge, there are huge opportunities for Latinos, not just the construction, not just the cleaning, not just doing other stuff, but there is also technology.
Yeah.
But it's, I think, and I completely agree with you guys, that is the environment that they live in, the environment. I wanted to add the volunteering part. You said that, if the company offers something to those who would like to volunteer, it will be great, it's just a recommendation, if you can help them to get a skill. If you offer them any skill, outreach skills, or as you mentioned, you took a speech class. So that's the way you overcome your challenge, right?
Mhm.
So if you offer that, if you see something that the community is interested, I'm pretty sure a lot of people are going to volunteer for you guys, for your organizations.
Oh,
Thank
yeah.
you so much.
Definitely to that because running Coding Coffee, we do see people from all different backgrounds, but at the same time, Latin and Latina Latinx folks tend to be our smallest, I guess, demographic. And one of the groups I found really catchy, but also very impactful, is the Techeria. It's like sort of like taco
Oh,
for tech.
Techeria.
And yeah, they've been
Techeria,
around
yeah.
since 2012. And yeah, they're amazing. They're fully volunteer-led organization. I believe they're always looking for sort of volunteers to help run their local events. So I highly suggest checking those folks out because I know the organizer in New York, and also my friend who's also was the roommate of the founder of that. They've been going strong since 2012, and like I totally do see sort of the benefit in helping sort of Latin and Latina and Latinx folks get more into tech because it is very much an underserved demographic, especially in Montgomery County for some reason.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to wrap us up. I'm going to bring us home. But again, I want to thank our panelists, our guest moderator. Thank you all for taking the time to participate. And, one of the resounding messages that I get is representation matters. And that's why the hub is here. And it's important that we are showing the variety of community members that we have. And tell your stories. And that's really what brings us together as a community. So thank you again, as Eduardo said, making yourselves available and vulnerable, and tell us your stories, because we have those stories. And I bet you there's somebody here or somebody online or somebody that will watch us in the future on YouTube that this will inspire them, and they will take your advice and they will go with their passion. So thank you again for showing up for us and being here as well. I'd like to thank our sponsor, Verizon, of this guest speaker series. We had an amazing dinner on behalf of Verizon, and I heard actually they have increased our grant funds. So they like what we're doing here at the Hub. So you'll see some new programming that will come out in the fall, but I just wanted to make sure to thank them. And then, of course, we have gifts for our guest speakers. Yes. Hold on one second, Eduardo. You're messing up my my little. They have a personalized card. Okay, this is for you. Yep, this is for you. That's okay. Yeah. Let's see. Oh, yep, that's what I'll be. Yeah. There we go. Okay. Yes, I had to do a little secret, code to know who gets what. So anyhow, the gifts are all the same, but there's a personalized card inside. Okay. That's the mom and me coming out. Everybody got the same thing. But anyhow, thank you. Very lastly, we have a survey. The Hub team does look at this information. If you like this, tell us. We want to continue to have these kinds of panels. We want to make sure that we are representing all of our community members. So fill that out, and thank you. And thank you for coming and being with us tonight. Thank you.